Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you unison note shapes. First off, if you like all the diagrams from this series, including the diagrams from this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Memorize Guitar Notes. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it might not be available as you're watching the lesson. But once it is available, a link will pop up on the screen that will allow you to download it. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to download it when it is available. This is part 6 from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So in the last lesson, I showed you octave shapes and how you could use them to find any note up and down the fretboard. In this lesson, I'm going to show you unison note shapes. And hopefully you remember from when I talked about the fretboard layout that octaves are the same note name but different pitches. Unison notes are the exact same pitch. So they're the exact same note, exact same pitch. And for example, a piano doesn't have unison notes, it only has octaves. So a guitar is harder to memorize the notes because of unisons. It's one of the reasons that you actually end up with notes that are exact same name and exact same pitch. And on the guitar, they sound a little different just depending on your string gauge and the intonation of your guitar, but technically they are the exact same pitch. And memorizing unison shapes isn't as helpful as memorizing octave shapes for finding all the notes up and down the fretboard. And that's because unison shapes aren't going to give you the same note up and down the whole fretboard. So for example, if you start with an E and find all the unisons, that's only going to give you so many of the E notes. There's going to be more E notes on the fretboard that are octaves apart from what you're started on. But it's still important to understand unisons for how the fretboard is laid out, and there is a useful trick that can help you with memorizing the fretboard. So they're worth learning, they're at least worth understanding, so don't just skip over and don't think they're useful. It's really important to understand how your fretboard is laid out. So we'll just start by going over the unison shapes, and just like the octaves, they're going to start on each string. And with this one, the string I'm talking about will be up towards the body of the guitar. So for example, this one's starting on the 6th string, so this note is the note I'm talking about. The note that's higher as far as towards the ceiling. And each one of these is going to be on adjacent strings. So octaves, we skip strings. Unison notes are going to be adjacent strings. So for example, this one starts on the 6th string and then goes to the 5th string. So unison shape 1 starts on the 6th string, and to get to its unison note on the 5th string, you're going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back towards your headstock, and then down just to the adjacent string. So they're harder to visualize than octave shapes because octave shapes are pretty easy to visualize once you memorize them. And octave shapes are pretty easy to hold both notes at the same time. Unison shapes are really long stretches, so unless you have pretty big hands or good stretch in your hand, you're not going to be able to hold it. Especially beginners are going to really struggle to hold those two notes at the same time. And unlike octave shapes, you usually don't find people playing those notes at the same time. With octave shapes I mentioned, you can play those two notes at the same time and it creates a really unique, cool sound. And the thing about unison notes is you kind of just have to use your ear. So you can get pretty quick at finding them by playing one of the notes and then playing the other note and just hearing that they sound the same. And over time you can get pretty quick where you could play one and then play the other one right after it. And that's something that's done in licks all the time, where you play one, play the other one right after it, and then go on to some other notes. And that creates a pretty unique sound because, like I said, on the guitar they sound a little different because of the string gauges. So that's shape 1. Shape 2 is the exact same. It's just starting on the 5th string now, so it's on the 5th and 4th string. So still you go back towards the headstock 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets, and then just down towards the floor 1 string. Unison shape is the exact same again as the last two. It just starts on the 4th string, so it's on the 4th and 3rd string. Unison shape 4 changes up, and that's because again we're hitting that 2nd string, and anytime we hit the 2nd string we need to move our note up 1 fret or 1/2 step to keep the same distance between notes as we were playing before. Because anytime you hit that 2nd string, you need to move that note up 1/2 step. So now the distance between these notes, we're starting on the 3rd string, going back towards the headstock 1, 2, 3, 4 frets, and then just down towards the floor 1 string. So going back towards the headstock 4 frets instead of 5. And then unison shape 5 goes back to the original shape And that's because now this note, which is on the second string, is hitting that second string, so it needs to go up 1/2 step. So again, just remember, anytime you hit that second string, your note has to go up 1 fret or 1/2 step to keep the same distance between notes. If you're playing a shape on these other strings, holding one certain type of shape, anytime you hit that second string, you need to move this one note on the second string up 1/2 step. And that goes for any shape that you're playing on these strings. And again, I'm not showing these as any specific notes. I'm just showing you the shapes right now. So these different shapes all have different notes from each other, but obviously each shape has the same note because that's what we're talking about, unison notes. So there's only 5 shapes starting on the 6th string, the 5th string, the 4th string, the 3rd string, and the 2nd string. And only one of the shapes is different, and that's this one, which has this note on the 2nd string. And then once this note ends up on the 2nd string, it just goes back to the original shape. And we can also view these as starting on the string that is closest to the floor, and it'd be the same thing except we go up towards the ceiling, so it'd still be the same distance of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets, but then we just go up towards the ceiling 1 string instead of down towards the floor. And that can be useful to visualize it the opposite way as well, because a lot of times you'll actually play the one that's closest to the floor and then play the one that's closest to the ceiling, like if you're playing a lick or something, or as I'll show you in just a sec, if you want to find unison notes, that can be an easier way to do it. So if we can play a little game like we did before and just start with, for example, the open E string, and we can start on the 1st string and just find all the unison notes going in adjacent strings. So you'd start on the 1st string, you'd find the one that's on the 2nd string, then the 3rd string, then the 4th string, and so on. Or if you wanted to start down low, if you knew the notes up here, you could do the same thing going back like we did originally. But if we start on this 1st string and want to find the unison notes to this specific note, we would just do what we did. We go up towards the body of the guitar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets, and up towards the ceiling 1 string. There's our unison note. Now we're on the 2nd string, so it changes up. We go up 4 frets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up towards the ceiling 1 string. And then that's the only time it's different. The rest you're going up 5 frets each time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up towards the ceiling 1 string. And just do it until you run out of room, and it just depends how many frets your guitar has. So for example, now we know these are all unison notes. They're the same note name and the same pitch. And you can get pretty quick at playing these and finding these and just using your ear to hear them. And like I said, unison notes aren't giving you all of the note names up and down the whole fretboard. So there's other E's that it left off because these are octaves from the one I started on. So these 2 E's, for example, are different octaves than this E. This one is 2 octaves apart. This one is 1 octave apart. So that's why you didn't hit those E's when you were doing this. So if you wanted to hit the rest of the E's, you'd have to start on a different E that was in a different octave and do the same thing until you ran out of room. And starting from this E, we'd only have 2 others that we could reach before we ran out of room. Or you could do it up here, which is an octave higher than this E, and do the same thing. And then it just depends how many frets your guitar has, whether you can reach another one or not. So even though this doesn't cover all the notes up and down the fretboard, it's still a useful tool to be able to find unisons up and down the fretboard. That'll really help you be able to visualize which notes are the same pitch, and it'll still help you find notes up and down the fretboard and visualize where they are. So just quickly, before these were your octaves, these are all F notes, and I ran this fretboard up a little higher. These are all octaves apart from each other, so this covers all the F notes up and down the whole fretboard as far as this is drawn. But these notes are unisons to each other. So these 2 are unisons, these are unisons, these are unisons. This one doesn't have a unison because that's as low as you can go. You're not going to have any room to reach another unison with the 6-string guitar. And then all the ones that don't have blue lines connected to each other are octaves from each other. So this is an octave, this is an octave, this is an octave, and so on. So together it would look like this. The blue is in the unison notes, the red is the octaves apart if you're going in these orders. So this is 2 octaves from this is 1 octave, this is 1 octave, 1 octave, 1 octave, and so on. But then if you're going in this direction, these are all unison, so same pitch. And then one more thing that you can visualize is anytime there's the same note 12 frets higher, if you can reach, those are octaves apart as well. So those are all in the green. So that's kind of how your guitar is laid out. It's kind of tricky to visualize and memorize, but it's useful to understand how octaves work and how unisons work, and that's going to help you not only memorize your fretboard, all the notes on your fretboard, but also just visualize how your fretboard is laid out, and will help you in tons of different ways down the road when you're playing licks, creating lines, or doing anything on the guitar. So those are unison note shapes. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to show you a trick for finding all the natural notes on the fretboard. And be sure to download the e-guide. All the diagrams are in there, and be sure to subscribe because we had at least one new lesson every day.